The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. I'm Ginny Van Dusen, Director of Alumni Career Development at Holy Cross, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. This is the next installment in our series of web-based presentations covering a broad range of career development topics. Today, I'm happy to welcome Scott Swedberg, CEO and Chief Career Coach at the Job Sauce, a results-focused career advancement company that helps people land their dream job, often at significant pay increase. He has hired, trained, and managed consultants, presented to thousands of people online and in person, and been responsible for multi-million-dollar sales territories. While working at LinkedIn, he collaborated with CEOs and VPs of HR on their hiring strategies, which helped him create the founding principles of the Job Sauce. We'll be together for a little under an hour today. Scott will speak, and will then take questions from you for as long as time allows. I encourage you to submit questions throughout this presentation by checking out the question function located on your webinar toolbar to the right. Thanks again for joining us, and now it's my pleasure to turn things over to Scott.
Thank you, Ginny. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Scott Swedberg from the Job Sauce, and today we're going to talk about landing your dream job. There are 5 key steps that you should take to land a job with greater impact and higher pay in 8 weeks, and you don't even need to be the most qualified candidate to do this. While some credentials are important, it's just one of many factors in getting hired once you're through the door. So if you've ever been discouraged from applying for a job because you didn't think you met the qualifications, you're about to learn some things that'll make you think differently and empower you to go after the jobs that you want. So this is for mid to senior level professionals who excel in their profession and want a better job. If you're driven to grow in your career but you're currently stuck, then this is for you. In the next 30 minutes, we'll talk about how to land your dream job in the next 8 weeks, even if you're not the most qualified candidate. The key to commanding significant pay raises of 20% or more and making at least 50% more money in your career lifetime. How to build career advancing relationships with industry experts whenever you want. How to get company VIPs to like and endorse you as a potential hire, and how to do all of this without going to networking events, never hearing back from jobs you applied for online, or selling out. My promise to you is a step-by-step strategy to land your dream job, so stick with me till the end. Now, I want you to carefully consider if you're experiencing any of this. Do you continually exceed expectations at your job, but your boss barely notices or gives you any credit? Do friends and family worry about how stressed and unfulfilled you are at work? You dread the start of every week and wonder, how long can I keep doing this? I had a client recently tell me that she called this the Sunday scaries, where your anxiety about the week ahead completely ruins your Sunday. Are you working way too hard on tasks that are a waste of your most valuable skills and aren't helping you grow? Are you often treated like you're incapable of doing more important tasks than you're given? And do you not make enough money to live the lifestyle that you imagine for your family and for yourself? In short, do you feel like there's an invisible ceiling on your career? Well, if this is how you feel, then you'll be happy to hear that those aren't the real problems. Those are just symptoms, and the real problem is that you haven't made what I'll call the shifts, and I'll go over those in a bit. Once you make it, you have real control over your career path and the salary that you deserve. You can start career conversations that establish you as an in-demand top talent in your industry, while also building meaningful relationships with company VIPs. You realize that that invisible ceiling on your career was never there to begin with, and you push through to your next promotion faster than you ever thought possible. And you do all of this while rediscovering your passion for the industry you work. The one thing that you need to know is that 5 simple shifts make the difference in landing your dream job with the salary and benefits that you deserve. Very quickly, I want to tell you a little bit about me and my work. As Ginny mentioned, I'm the CEO and Chief Career Coach of the Job Sauce, former LinkedIn employee and former territory manager. On average, my clients see a salary increase of more than 40%, and the market standard is 8%. And that all comes down to the methods that I'm about to lay out for you. My #1 priority is my client's end result. So we only do full cycle coaching. It's about landing the dream job, because ultimately, having a nice resume doesn't really matter if it doesn't get you the end result. I initially discovered the 5 shifts as a hiring manager at an industry leader before I started working at LinkedIn. And part of that job was helping with outplacement for our first-year consultants. Some of them had incredible breakthroughs, from 1 year of experience to a marketing director at a brewing company, becoming an analyst at Ernst & Young, to becoming a software engineer in Silicon Valley. But some didn't get impressive results. So I looked at both groups and discovered that the 5 top achievers did 5 very specific things, and it didn't matter what industry. Now, this was just a hypothesis until I started working at LinkedIn, talking to CEOs and VPs all day long about how they hire and why, to show that this wasn't just a fluke for the company I worked for or something that just worked for younger individuals. It was something that worked for everybody. And that cemented that if you can do just these 5 things, regardless of your age or industry, you can land your next dream job. So the 5 key shifts that'll take your career from stagnant and unappreciated to fulfilling, exciting, and praised, while also guaranteeing a more comfortable salary and benefits. These are what they are, and you just need to act on them. So enough explaining, let's dig in. The first shift is to operate with complete integrity. Now, you might have expected something a little bit sexier to kick it off, but it's truly the foundation of everything. It is the key to any relationship, both personal and professional. Would you want to work with someone who wasn't honest or moral? Well, neither does anyone else, and it's one of the top factors in making hiring decisions. So you must never misrepresent your skills or abilities. That doesn't mean don't talk yourself up, but you can't do it to the point of being misleading or lying. You need to constantly be striving to improve and grow in your skill set, aiming to be one of the best and constantly working towards it. And everything about you must reflect this. Now, if you don't operate with complete integrity, it will come back to bite you in the butt. So think of this in terms of a concept that we'll call the mirror. There is no escaping cause and effect, no matter how great you are. Shady dealings and misinformation breed mistrust and secrecy, which won't get you the job you want. What you project reflects right back on you. So this means that hiring managers can tell when you're lying, that entry-level tactics will get you entry-level jobs, that if you want an impressive job, you need to go about it in an impressive way, especially considering that 80% of job opportunities are not posted. You can't just apply for these jobs. You need to go out and find them and get them. So when you do this right, you can change your tactics, and there's a whole new world of possibilities out there. But when you get it wrong, you're stuck applying for jobs that hundreds of other people apply to, never hearing back, or telling lies that eventually come back to bite you in the butt. I had a client who told me that he'd applied to 50 jobs and didn't hear back from any of them other than a nice email that says, oh yes, we received your application. Since doing this webinar, I've had people tell me that they've applied to over 200 jobs without hearing back whether they're going to advance in the process. So to sum it up, remember to be constantly growing, aiming to be one of the best in your field, never misrepresenting your skills and abilities, and that you need to use impressive tactics to get an impressive job. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. The next shift is to look outside of your cubicle. So you need to understand what you're worth outside of your current company to understand your value within it. And a promotion within your company is not always the best choice. You need to understand what's out there. You need to test the waters for job responsibilities and pay if you want to gain leverage for internal promotions as well. Unfortunately, talent pays more than loyalty just because of market trends, especially in terms of increased competition and recent recessions. What it ultimately means is that companies pay more for external hires, typically 10 to 20% more. People who change companies every 2 years make 50% more over their careers than people who stay in the same company, according to Forbes. And with average internal raises at 3% and inflation at 2.1%, that means that if you just stay in your current role, you will not see a significant increase in lifestyle 10 years from now. But when you get this right, when you understand how to get those pay jumps, whether you move companies or not, you can make $500,000 more over the next 10 years. When you get it wrong, you're barely keeping up with inflation. So this is what it looks like. The blue is if you stay where you are right now. The red is if you make one change and then stay. And the green is if you change every 2 years with just a 20% raise. So if you're making $60,000 right now, like it shows in the graph, that's $480,000 more in the next 10 years if you're making a change every 2 years with that 20% raise. It's the difference between making $80,000 a year and over $200,000 a year 10 years from now. If you're making $100,000 now, that's a difference. That's an $800,000 difference. Making $135,000 versus $350,000 10 years from now. Now think about what this could mean across your entire lifetime. This is just a snapshot of the next 10 years. So how much less have you made in your career lifetime because you haven't gotten a significant raise, and how far behind the curve are you because you haven't been growing and learning new skills that are valuable in your industry? You don't always have to change companies to get this, but you only get big pay raises and promotions if your perceived value goes up along with your real value. Many times it takes a competing offer and the worry of losing you for your boss to recognize how valuable you really are. So how much money are you not making because you haven't assessed your value? Quickly, I want to tell you Matt's story. Matt was a senior analyst. He was overworked but very well paid. He was the guy that the managers relied on for the important work when they were under deadline. And he really wanted to buy a house and fix it up. And he had the money, but he didn't have the time to put into it. And he was working over 80 hours a week consistently. He took a look at some of his company's competitors, jobs that turns out were even a better fit for what he was good at and what he liked doing, and ultimately resulted in a 30% raise for about half the hours, meaning that he was making about 2.5 times the hourly rate as before. So not only could he afford to buy this house and pay it off even faster, but he was also able to spend the time to fix it up because it was something that he really enjoyed doing and wanting to do. So to sum it up, you need to know at least what you're worth outside of your current company and be willing to make a switch if you want to stay challenged, continually growing in your profession, and be well paid. So how can you make these changes effectively? Well, you use something that I call the secret weapon. So you've been lied to for years. What you usually hear is that all you need is a resume and cover letter, maybe use a recruiter or get a temp job there so then you can become full-time. Make sure you have great business cards and a great LinkedIn. Maybe write a blog about your industry to show that you're really invested in it. You go to websites like Indeed or Monster. This is what I call the cross your fingers job search. And it's why so many people are stuck in jobs that they hate. So does this really make sense that you combine all of these and somehow you get through the process, it makes you a better candidate, and you're happy with the end result? Well, you've kind of been wasting your time wondering whether it's going to turn into a job that you want. And the chances are really low when you look at how everyone else is going about it, which is this exact same way. If it doesn't turn out in the way that you want, a lot of people feel like it's something that's wrong with them and they give up on their dream job and they settle. And your inability to get the job that you want and deserve isn't really your fault. It's just that you've been going about it wrong. So here's what actually works, and it's what allows my clients to get their dream jobs in 8 weeks of huge raises, doing impactful work that they love with people they actually enjoy working with. The informational interview is the most powerful way to begin a job conversation with a potential employer. It establishes your expertise and likability, it builds professional rapport, and ultimately gets you referred for the job that you want. And it's the secret weapon because it gets you referred. An informational interview without a referral is not a secret weapon. But the key is, how do you get referred? And does this really work? Well, a job seeker who's referred is conservatively 3 to 4 times more likely to get hired. Some studies say that it's up to 14 times more likely than someone who applies for a job without a referral. This is according to Career Crossroads, which compiles hiring data. Lou Adler, who's an author and well-respected HR and staffing expert, says that being referred to a hiring manager by a trusted person is 50 to 100 times more likely to result in being interviewed and hired compared to submitting a resume to a posted job. And I know this also from speaking to hundreds of CEOs while working at LinkedIn. They want to hire people that they know or people that their employees know somehow. If that wasn't enough, in that process, you gain valuable industry insights that you can't read on Forbes or LinkedIn. You establish meaningful relationships with talented professionals who could become mentors. You access the jobs that aren't posted, and you help out your contact, because many referral programs pay out between $2,000 and $5,000 if you get hired. So when you get this right, you instantly have a huge support within the company who is invested in you, both literally and figuratively. And if you don't get this right, well, you're just another name in the resume pile that won't get a call back for your dream job, and that can be demoralizing. That's why people give up. So the new way of going about this, you don't need those time wasters we talked about before to get the job that you want. A great referral gives you the best chance of getting hired. So here's what it can look like. The first step often begins with a LinkedIn search to see who your connections know at a company that can help you, or to remind you of who is in your network. When you're really drilling down, an advanced search on LinkedIn is pretty easy to use, and it can help you identify the perfect person that you want to speak with and who is in your network that can introduce you to that person. Alternatively, you can view fellow alumni by a cool feature on here. If you go to My Network and down to Find Alumni, it shows you everyone from the institution that you've listed on your LinkedIn profile and where they work, where they live. It breaks it down at that high level, and you can drill down from there. To get to the informational interview, oftentimes it's having your connection introduce you to that person with an ask for a 20-minute conversation. Or you can reach out directly by referencing that person who is a connection, or oftentimes using something that you have in common, some type of similarity, is enough to at least get a response, and you can work it from there. It could be something like you both graduated from Holy Cross, or you both support the same nonprofit, drawing attention to that. So once you've been introduced to have that informational interview, that's what ultimately leads to the referral, which gets you into the formal interview process, being a top candidate, someone that someone important at the company has referred, and follow through in the way that you normally would with your foot in the door. Oftentimes it's resulting in a job offer, especially because you have borrowed credibility. So the well-executed informational interview is the key here. We'll talk about that in a second. But you can track your entire job search through this process, and you should. So let's dig into the informational interview. So the informational interview really is the key, because it establishes your fit in the company, it builds a relationship, and it gives them an opportunity to help you. Oftentimes we're almost afraid to let other people help us, things that we need to do everything on our own, but there's so much opportunity here. The first piece is just a basic 5-minute introduction to build connection and enthusiasm. It's oftentimes when you're telling your brief story about who you are and why you're interested in talking to them. So you're asking them about specific industry insights, that they are a perfect person to talk to because of what your interests are and the questions that you have, and that you want to learn more because you're thinking about making some kind of career change. You also want to mention that you're making some kind of career change, because that leaves no question that you're also interested in how they can help you find a job. It's not the primary purpose, and it's not something to talk about the whole time, but because you mention that and you have a good answer to their question of, oh, so we don't really know each other, tell me about yourself, where you give your elevator pitch and set the tone for your expertise, that combination frames the rest of the conversation. So the meat of the conversation is 15 to 20 minutes of learning and liking. It's asking questions that help you build a relationship. Now, these are questions about this person's industry and company that it feels like only they can answer, or that they have the best possible answers to your question. People want to help other talented professionals or rising stars, and you can demonstrate your understanding of their company and industry through the expert questions that you ask and making them feel like an expert in the process. The last part is how they can help. Now remember, the informational interview is close to worthless if you can't get some kind of next step, whether it's identifying a job at another company that's a good fit, identifying other people you should speak with, or figuring out what job opening at that company, which you've probably researched ahead of time, this person could refer you for. Oftentimes they'll directly ask how they can help, or in the course of the process and them asking you questions, because it is a conversation, they'll say something like, oh yeah, it sounds like you'd be a great fit for this position. I'd be happy to pass your resume along if that's something you wanted to apply for. Some alternative questions that will help you get to that part is asking, oh, what positions would you recommend that I look at, or who else would you recommend that I talk to, or better yet, if you were in my shoes, how would you go about this process? And at this point, you already have the borrowed credibility of the person who introduced you, or this person will assume that you have some kind of credibility because they've taken the time to speak with you. I know that might not make a lot of sense at a high level, but psychologically, whenever we take the time to invest in someone else outside of what we do on a day-to-day basis, we think about the good things in them and we justify that we're spending the time to talk to them. So psychology is on your side here to ask for this person's help, and this is your chance to get referred. This works regardless of whether you're fresh out of college or a 30-year industry veteran. Frankly, the proof is in the pudding when you look at the results that people get. One of my clients, Lauren, was stuck in an entry-level journalism job, which she was vastly overqualified for, and she had an overly critical boss who was also untrustworthy. She needed to make a switch, and she conducted an informational interview with an editor at one of the top news agencies in the world through a former professor and mentor. She ended up getting a verbal offer within 2 weeks of that initial conversation with a 75% raise and a huge bump in benefits. And 6 months later, she used the same techniques to get another promotion and an additional 36% raise, effectively doubling her salary for a dream job in her dream city. And that's not the only example. You could take Pete, who's a VP of sales in North America, a very experienced professional. He was hired to build and train a team, but the company changed their mind, ultimately made him the lone salesperson in all of North America, which is not what he wanted to be doing. His running club buddy introduced him to his now boss for an informational interview. Now he's in a sales management role at a blue chip company, and he's positioned to be a CEO at a small and medium-sized company in 3 to 5 years. You take Emma, who moved to the West Coast to work in solar, which is her passion. She tried sales but quit. She was much better in the communications PR side of things. She was able to get an informational interview with the development director, and ultimately through that process convinced the executive director to hire her for a significantly bigger role than the original conversation entailed. 110% raise from her previous role, working for her dream company and her passion, doing work that she's actually good at. So you take Matt, who's an engineer, who's a VP of product. He got laid off from his company and had to take a job making $90,000 at a dying organization to make ends meet while firing off resumes in the black hole. He said, after 1 short month, I had a calendar full of informational interviews with top executives of prospect companies, and ultimately a mentor of his introduced him to a CEO that he'd met while consulting, and Matt received an offer within 24 hours of his first call because of that strong recommendation from his mentor. He ultimately negotiated to a $170,000 base salary plus a huge commission package. Remember that the informational interview is your secret weapon to get the job that you want. And these results, you can do the same thing. Applying for openings is a waste of your time because your odds are extremely slim. Use informational interviews if you want to get referred and get these kinds of results. So far we've talked about operating with complete integrity, that you need to look outside of your cubicle and use the secret weapon of informational interviews. So now let's talk about how we command promotions only, even if we don't feel qualified, even if we're completely changing careers. So our fourth shift is to command promotions and only promotions. Now keep in mind that a promotion in this context is anything that's better overall than your current role. And this does include changing careers. So there are 2 main reasons that you're looking for a new job that isn't a promotion. Either you don't think that you have enough experience for that role, or you think you do have enough experience and you could do the role, but the person hiring won't see it. They won't see what you have to offer, so it's not going to work. lateral moves into the same role in the same industry will not grow your career. They only show future employers that you're willing to settle, and it'll make you settle in other parts of your life. If you've experienced this and just jumped from the same role to the same role, not really making any advances when your goal was to get a promotion and to advance, this idea of settling in one area and then making it settle in the rest of your life, it may sound familiar. So you might be saying, okay, fine, but how do I get promoted if I don't have the experience, Scott? Well, you need to target special projects or work on it on your own. You can and should leverage the special projects that aren't necessarily part of your job description or maybe even your job, and the new skills that you earn to get a promotion. If you want to make some kind of career change, you might not see it on your own, but I guarantee you there's some kind of experience that you've had where you've excelled doing that that has made you want to make that kind of career change. So you may already have some of these special promotions, but you haven't brought them up because they aren't officially part of your job. So you never thought, well, this special project or this volunteer work or this thing I do on the side isn't really relevant to what I'm doing. Well, it is. I had a client who was a mechanical engineer but hated the work. He was good at it, but the actual work of it and the environment just wasn't for him. So he learned how to code on the side. Well, he did an informational interview to get in the door for a software development position. And he was able to show his skills in the technical interview because ultimately they just care about can you do the work at the very basic level. And now he codes for a company that maps 3D blueprints for construction projects. He was actually a better candidate for the job because of his mechanical engineering background, because he also knew how to code. Now, if a job requires that you know how to code in C++ or Java or something, then you need to be able to do that. But ultimately, if you can meet the baseline qualifications from a skill perspective, the rest of it is about how you can show that your past experience actually makes you a better candidate than the other people who just have experience in that one field. So you need to gain clarity on what a promotion really means to you. Because remember, a lateral move when you're changing careers and have a lot more upside in that career, that is not a lateral move, that is a promotion. So you need to be able to articulate why it's going to enhance your career. When you get this right, when you're only advancing and growing, and the evidence of this growth shows that you have strategic abilities, not only are you a lot happier, but when you start looking towards higher positions, you can show that you have those strategic abilities that are necessary in those roles because of the career path that you've taken. But when you get this wrong, you just become that miserable coworker who's been in the same position for years, just coasting by with no fulfillment, getting angry about who stole your red stapler. So John was a mid-level financial controller. He was making about 58K. He was in the same job for a year and a half. Things were not going the way that he wanted. His responsibilities in that job were not a stretch to begin with. It was the same old thing every day. He was so bored. He talked to his boss and he said, oh, there are no promotions available. There's nothing we can do. You're stuck in that role. And he was really good at the job, so they were very happy to say that he was stuck in that role. So he took a look at the market. He looked outside of his cubicle and realized that he was already doing things well past his current role, that in a position entailing those responsibilities in another company, he could be making a lot more money and have some of the fun benefits that he actually wanted. So he did an informational interview with a different company, and it turned into an offer for 90K. 58 to 90K, not too bad. So he came back to his employer, thought, okay, well, they already told me that there was nothing available, so I'm just going to tell them that this is going on and put in my notice. Well, his current employer offered him a $25,000 raise and a promotion that supposedly didn't exist, plus an interview that he said would advance his career by 10 years, really making him do the things that he was passionate about in his field. He said, I didn't think it was possible to be in a real position of power at such a large corporation. By the way, about a month and a half ago, he just got that promotion that he interviewed for that would advance his career by 10 years. Now he's making well over $100,000 doing exactly what he wants to do, and a year ago he was making $58,000. So when you're willing to settle, when you've earned a promotion, you will continue settling, and you'll believe what other people tell you that they'll say to keep you in that position because you're good at that position and they don't want to lose you. But when you refuse to settle and you show the value within your company, the results that you'll achieve, they can blow you away. So the last shift is to invest in mentoring. And the obvious benefit is informational interviews and connections to other people, but it is about a lot more than that. Everyone should have a mentor because it brings three important things. It brings new ideas and insight and accountability, and it is an investment in yourself. So there are new ideas in your head right now that would not have been there if you didn't make the time for this webinar. So investing in yourself is the most important piece here. I'm just highlighting the mentoring piece in particular. Common advice from some of the most successful people out there, Warren Buffett, John Wooden, Ben Franklin, whoever, is that an investment in yourself is the most valuable thing that you can do. So a good mentor will give you great ideas and make sure that you act on them. And nothing happens without action. You can't think your way into a new job. But a great mentor will also pull together insight from other people working towards similar goals to multiply everyone's effectiveness exponentially. Now, it's hard to get things done on your own when you have the rest of your life to worry about. Kids, loans, mortgage, a spouse, aging parents, your own health. When I work with clients, we use a term called top connectors, and each of you has a handful or the makings of some. And the more you cultivate this, the easier life becomes when you want to do something spectacular, whether it's starting your own company, going after an incredible job, or overcoming significant odds. When you have that great mentor, you follow through on those ideas because of the accountability in place, with support along the way, and you continue moving forward. But when you don't have any kind of mentorship, any ideas that you do have take a back seat to seemingly more important things. You're much more easily sidetracked. So invest in mentoring because it's also an investment in yourself. So today I talked to you about how to land your dream job in the next 8 weeks, even if you're not the most qualified candidate. The key to making 50% more money in your career lifetime by commanding significant pay raises. How to build meaningful relationships with experts that will advance your career whenever you want. How to get company VIPs to like and endorse you as a potential hire, and how to do all of this without going to networking events, wondering whether anyone's going to get back to you about that job you applied for, or selling out. What you need to win is to operate with complete integrity, to look outside of your current employer, to use the secret weapon of informational interviews, command promotions and only promotions, and invest in mentoring. These 5 shifts alone are enough to propel you down your ideal career path. Now, I've given you the information that you need to move forward. But like I mentioned before, the key is action. So will you act? Now, you have a choice. Most people will take this information, consider doing something about it, another nice webinar with nice ideas, but stay right where they are because other things get in the way. Or you can take action. Now, you came to this webinar for a reason, because you've hit some kind of roadblock in your career and you're struggling to break free. So you can keep struggling, or if you want to take your career to the next level, to finally get a promotion that catapults you forward, to start doing something that you love, get paid well to do, where you're growing and achieving huge results in your industry, feeling passion for your work again, well, if that's what you want, then I have something for you. Now, I just gave you the broad strokes, the 5 big shifts, and you can try to go it alone, trial and error till it works, however long that takes, months or even years from now, but every career and industry is different with important details to adjust to make it work for you, especially if you want to make a significant change. Now, if you want to learn from the experts so you don't waste your time and energy, we can do that, because my team and I have set aside some time in the next week to speak to you personally about how you can apply these ideas to your career starting today. And the cost? Well, it's free. But here's the catch. This is not for everyone. You must be absolutely committed to landing your next dream job with complete integrity and have a true desire to be exceptional in your fields. You must have real expertise and drive. If you're content coasting in your career, this is not for you. You'll be wasting your time and ours. So on the call, we'll help you get complete clarity about the job that is your dream job and what you want it to look like, identify what's been holding you back, and determine the exact steps that you should take to land your dream job so you never have to do the cross your fingers method again. If it's a good fit, and we're very picky about who we have for clients, we might discuss our full coaching services, and that is not free. So how can we guarantee this? Well, it's what we do all day, every day. You're not going to find anyone who's better at this. Even if you're not sure how valuable your skills really are, even if you haven't looked at your LinkedIn in months, even if you don't think you have a powerful network, even if you're not sure about any of those things, our process helps you land your dream job. If we did work together, we would put you through the same program we've put our most successful professionals through, up to the C level. Our customized training is designed to get you to your next dream job and beyond. So remember that you can apply these skills to make 50% more over your career once you become a pro at it, just from average raises. If you did follow our program, you can be having career conversations with company VIPs after 2 weeks and negotiating your new job in 8 weeks. So this is more than just training. We take you by the hand and walk you through the process, so you have guidance every single step of the way until you land your dream job. So if that sounds good to you, you can schedule a free strategy call at thejobsauce.com/schedule. But spaces are pretty limited, so you can go ahead and sign up now as I wrap up and before we get to questions. Now, you remember some of those clients that I mentioned, Matt, who increased his salary by 30% and halved his hours, John, who went from stuck and underpaid to an immediate promotion and then another promotion soon after to do what he actually wants to be doing in his industry, Lauren, who escaped a horrible work environment to rediscover her passion and more than double her salary in the process. The one thing all of them had in common is that they were smart enough to reach out and get help because they aren't professional job seekers. Their expertise is in their career. Well, their success can be your success. It all begins with scheduling a call and letting us help you on the first step. Again, I'm Scott Swedberg from the Job Sauce. You can sign up at this link, and let's talk soon. I'll now turn it over to Ginny to start taking some questions.
Thank you, Scott. We do have some questions that have come in. Some of them follow along similar lines of thought, so I'll try to group them. There were a couple related to this one, which says, I want to change careers. All of my network, though, is in my current career. How do I get out with no outside network?
So all of your network might be in that industry, but that doesn't mean that everyone within your network has the same network as you. So the people that you know, if you're interested in this career shift, and it would make a lot more, it would be a lot easier to have this discussion if I knew specifically what shift you were trying to make, so I can give you further suggestions. But it's likely that if you're looking to make a switch and there's something in your life that has compelled you to make that switch, and your life is made up of people in it who are part of your network, there are likely people that you know who have connections into that industry. If you really do not, and somehow by some stroke of terrible luck, there is no way for you to get connected directly to someone in the industry you want to work with because none of your connections know anyone there, you can still reach out to people that are also Holy Cross alumni or support the same kind of causes as you. Or they might be people that you went to high school with and were good friends with and never, you just haven't reconnected in a while, and they might know people. There are so many different ways to figure out who your connections are in that industry. And worst case scenario, you can look up one of the companies that you want to work for, figure out who the hiring manager is, and reach out in a way that references the similarities that you have and make the conversation about making that kind of shift. People want to help other people. They want to feel valuable in other people's lives. So even if you don't have any connections to that industry, meaning your connections don't have any connections, even reaching out with something as basic as, hey, we were both Holy Cross alumni, I'd love to talk to you about transitioning to your industry, that person could very easily become one of your biggest supporters and make that process of having informational reviews with the right people a lot easier.
All right, next question. How should one go about finding a mentor?
So the ideal characteristics of a mentor is first and foremost that this person cares about you and your success, and ideally is unabashedly supportive of you and one of your biggest fans. That is the number one piece, that this person will go to bat and say, yes, this person is a rock star. Anyone who hires this person is going to be lucky that they hired them, and like, yeah, you can thank me later for making the introduction. So that is the first piece, or some level of that. The other piece that makes it ideal is that that person has some kind of connections to the industry you want to work in. And that's not, we can make assumptions about whether someone has connections to that industry, but you never really know. One of my best friends and mentors, I just found out the other day that his dad is a retired chief technology officer who used to work at Lockheed Martin. I did not think that I ever had any connections to the defense industry, but I had never asked one of my best friends what his dad does. So you never really know who people have for connections until you have that initial conversation. So the two main characteristics, the person is willing to go out of their way to help you, and ideally they have connections to the industry you want to work in. But that first one about them supporting you no matter what, that is the key.
All right, and I'd also like to interject there and let people know that there are career advisors, Holy Cross alumni, who have volunteered to have career conversations with current students and fellow Crusaders, and some of them have indicated that they would be willing to participate in a more long-term role, more of a mentor role with other alumni, so be sure to check out the alumni directory on that. There have been a couple questions around age discrimination. Can you focus on people continuing to evolve toward their dream job later in their career / how to get by age discrimination? Don't know if that's really in your wheelhouse, but thought I'd toss that one out to you, Scott.
Sure. Yeah, I've had quite a few clients who are making career transitions later in their career. A few who are in their mid-60s who wanted to use their skills in an industry that they really cared about, were passionate about, but just haven't been able to work in. The key is to target positions where your past experience and age make you a better candidate than anyone who is younger, and that is a major selling point in how you present yourself. If you just don't talk about the fact that you're older than a lot of the candidates, then a lot of people will think that you also see that as a disadvantage. The key is to figure out why your age and experience is an advantage in your career. Now, if it comes down to that you don't know certain technological skills, you need to address that right away by gaining those skills. There's so many free resources online that will help you gain those skills. I know that a few of Holy Cross's webinars in the past have touched on some skills that are valuable in a couple fields. You need to make sure that you have any of the skills that could be the basis for that kind of age discrimination, and I mean, you'd have to have some conversations to figure out what could be the source of some of that discrimination, because it's likely not just that you're older. They're making your age mean something in terms of your inability to get a job done. So we need to figure out what are they making your age mean, and how do we spin that on its head and turn that into an advantage. So it all starts with figuring out the basis of that age discrimination, making sure that you tackle that, and then being able to articulate why your age and experience is an advantage over everyone else, that because you're 15, 20 years older than some of the other top candidates, you are a better fit than everyone else, and it almost doesn't even make sense for them to look at anyone who isn't your age.
Okay, thank you. Here's an interesting one. How aggressive should you be with following up?
It depends on who you're following up with and the industry. It's typically preferred if your connection is introducing you to someone to have that connection reach out. That, now say my friend Ryan is introducing me to this executive named Ben, and Ryan makes the introduction, I respond to Ben, and Ben doesn't get back to me, and 4 or 5 days go by. I'm not going to respond to Ben again and say something like, oh, hey, I saw you haven't gotten back to me. I know you're busy, but I'd love to talk to you. I'm going to ask Ryan to reach out to Ben, and this is assuming that Ryan has spoken to Ben and already said, hey, is it cool if I make this introduction? That's typically best practice if you're making an introduction to someone else. Don't just do it blankly or without notifying them and surprising them. You need to make sure that they ask permission to make the introduction. And assuming that they got that permission, you have Ryan follow up with Ben. You don't do the follow-up because you don't know exactly who that person is. You don't know how they're going to respond to it. But if you go through Ryan, you have a much better chance of getting connected to Ben. If you're just reaching out to someone who you both went to Holy Cross and you're trying to get in touch with them, it's usually not a good idea to send emails on Mondays or Fridays. Those are usually either Monday, they have to catch up from everything from the end of last week and whatever they got over the weekend, and they've got all these projects. And on Friday, it's like, I just don't want to deal with this right now. They don't expect me to answer it, within 6 hours, so I'll just wait till Monday, and then it might get lost in the shuffle. So as long as you're not following up on Monday or Friday, if I'm reaching out to someone directly, typically I'm going to give it, or I'm going to recommend clients give it 3 to 4 days. It's a little bit different if you are in a sales career. It's typically seen as beneficial to be more persistent if you're reaching out to a hiring manager for a sales role. But salespeople and most other people have different expectations of what's annoying versus what's persistent. So it varies based on industry and the level of role that you're going for. As well, if you're targeting a senior level role, then you don't want to come off as desperate either. That the same practice for someone going for a VP role compared to someone going for a next step up from entry level role, the younger person might be perceived as persistent and a go-getter, and the older person might be seen as desperate. It also depends on cultures as well. If you're looking at international jobs, there are different cultural expectations, which we can't really go into now. But the short of it is, don't send follow-up emails or emails to begin with on Mondays or Fridays. Those typically are going to get lost. And ideally, you want your connection to be the one to make the first request for follow-up to make sure that you two are in touch. Otherwise, give it 3 to 4 days before you send the next one, and ideally add some value instead of just checking in to see if they got your email.
Okay, next question. How do you assess your value outside your cubicle, particularly if your job is difficult to define?
Well, you can start by better defining what your role is. If you don't know how to explain your role or see what the core responsibilities are, then you're going to have a really hard time articulating it to anyone to figure that out. So you need to figure out what are your core responsibilities and talk to some people who can give you some additional insight into what are some comparable titles in my field for what it is that I'm doing. Or you can just start with what your actual title is. Many times, if your position is difficult to define within your industry or at your company, then it's probably similar across industries. And even just talking to people who are in alumni relations at universities, they have such varying responsibilities for what their priorities are, and what they do on a day-to-day basis. So just starting with that title is a good starting point, but ultimately it comes down to having conversations with people to get those insights. So sitting around and thinking about it on your own, it hasn't helped you yet, so it's not going to help you into the future. I can't give you a magical formula. You need to talk to people who can help you suss that out and figure out what other positions are comparable, so you can start looking into what it looks like outside of your current role.
Right, and a couple of other ideas there too is if you're involved in any sort of professional associations, you'll be connecting with colleagues doing at least similar work in a similar industry, and you can pick up some anecdotal information that way. Another option is Glassdoor.com, which is a website that has information, a lot of it's salary related, about different employers and reviews from people who work there. Let's see.
Oh yeah, and you can also, even just looking up job descriptions for similar titles, that are a similar title that you have or roles you think are close, and looking at the job responsibilities, if you're having trouble articulating it, that's usually a good place to start, because you're also going to learn how potential employers are explaining what they need people to do, and you can think of it as a checklist. Which of these things do I do, and which of them do I not? And that's a much easier place to start than, or it gives you the ability to ask better questions when you're talking to people from professional organizations or people in your network.
All right, next question. It seems like the people who might know people for me to talk to work with me. I don't think I can ask colleagues to connect me with people in another company, as this would show that I want to switch jobs. Is there a workaround?
Yes.
I would put in another plug for the Holy Cross alumni directory.
Yeah. If you're worried about making waves at your current employer, that those are your only connections, then you can just not use those connections and use the Holy Cross alumni directory. It's a vastly underused resource. Most people don't even think to look. Holy Cross has a lot more resources than you probably realize, so certainly take a look there. Some alternatives are you can reach out to that person directly and reference that you both know that same person, and that might still get back to the connection. But another alternative is reach out and make it about the content of what you can learn from them. You're going to have to face the fact with your employers that something isn't going well, and you don't want to misrepresent your feelings at your current company. You want to be able to have a frank conversation with whoever you need to about whether you're satisfied with the position or not, and take some kind of action. Maybe you shouldn't be changing roles. Maybe you shouldn't be leaving your company. If you haven't had a conversation with a boss or anyone else about some changes that you could make to make that role more enjoyable for you, then you're not going to have those conversations in the future. So that's something that's pivotal and crucial to enjoying where you're working, being able to have open communication with the people who dictate whether you like the job and the everyday work or not. I'm a big proponent of not keeping secrets. You don't need to be overt about it, but you can tell people, yeah, I'm looking around because I'm not really happy here because of these things going on, and that you've talked to the person who's responsible for those things, and it hasn't changed. So no one's surprised. and you can leave on good terms. But if you just surprise people, or you're not going to be able to make that switch because all of your connections are through your current employer, then it's just not really going to work. And you can also look at people who have also left your current employer, probably for similar reasons that you're looking to leave, and they will be sensitive to your reasons for leaving, and they'll likely want to support you if it's one of those situations where things just can't change. So it's also useful to look at people who used to work for your current employer and you had a good relationship with them, and talk to them about how they went about the process.
Okay. Here's an interesting one. How often is too often to entertain internal job interviews? I sometimes view these as great networking opportunities. What's your take on that?
How often is too often? It depends a little bit on the company culture, but you don't want to make it seem like you're just willing to take any other job than what you have right now. You need to be able to define what it is that you're looking for. And if there are 3 openings that are the thing that you're looking for, then it makes sense and is completely understandable for you to interview for all 3 positions. But if there just happen to be 3 positions open internally at your company, and they're all very different and you're interviewing for all of them, that's going to raise a red flag. That's not going to make any sense to anyone. It's like, what, you hate your current role so much that you're willing to just do anything? A lot of it comes down to how can I explain this if someone asks me about it, and how is this going to look? That's going to dictate how often is too often with internal interview opportunities. If you're just looking for it for a networking piece, just reach out to that person and set a coffee meeting, go to lunch with them. Don't use internal interviews as networking, because it adds too many complications. But it's fine to interview with however many openings are a good fit for you and what you're looking for next.
All right, looks like we've got time for one more question. What system should today's graduates, or perhaps everyone, be using to best keep track of and update their network?
Well, LinkedIn, for starters. It's absolutely amazing how much information is on LinkedIn. I can, with anybody's name who has a full LinkedIn profile, just from this webinar, I'm sure that I could just plug in that you went to Holy Cross and put in your name, and be able to know when you graduated, what groups you're part of, what causes you support, what your responsibilities are at different companies. From that, I can figure out how much money you make or how much influence you have within those roles. There's just so much information on LinkedIn that people just put out there. So connect with people on LinkedIn. If you're going to post anywhere and provide value for your network, then posting on LinkedIn is a good place. Some networking events are useful, but most of them aren't. Ultimately, it's the way that you maintain your network is by seeing those people. It takes a little bit more time, but having conversations with them and seeing them wherever you can see them, whether that's the company picnic that you're not sure you want to go to, but you should go to because you can talk to the people that you already know and don't get to see. It could be some type of regional alumni event for Holy Cross. Seeing people in person and having conversations with them is your #1 strategy for maintaining and building your network, because if you want to get introduced to someone who's doing a certain thing, talk about that certain thing. And a lot of times people say, oh, you know what? I know someone who you should definitely talk to who knows a lot more about this than me. And then they'll make an introduction. And then use LinkedIn to keep track of all that. Connect with people in a meaningful way, so you customize that reach out. But ultimately, seeing people in person and using LinkedIn that's what's going to get you the most value for your network.
Great. All right, I do want to say before we close here that there were a bunch of questions that came in about slightly related but a little different topics, ranging from how to take advantage of the alumni network to career change to compensation, how to target specific employers. All of that information you can get, I'm sure, when working with Scott. You can also reach out to me in the alumni office. You can check out the career development section of the alumni website. We have a lot of resources on there, previous webinars. But I want to offer my thanks again to Scott for sharing his time and knowledge with us today. If you're interested in taking advantage of Scott's special offer, the sign-up information is on the screen in front of you. If you miss it for some reason, it will be in an email that I send out later this afternoon, or you can just email to get it. And I want to thank you too for joining us. A recording of this presentation will be available on the Alumni Career Development website within a few days, and I'll send out an email to all of you when it's posted. You'll also receive a short email survey about this webinar, and I encourage you to share your feedback with us. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to me in the alumni office as well. And I hope you can join us for our next webinar on January 11th, where we'll kick off the new year with a look at that elusive work-life balance with life coach and Holy Cross alumna class of '89, Colleen Walsh. Look for more information in about 2 weeks when online registration will open. Again, thanks for joining us and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.